All right, be sure to check out Afora Water, who is here today. Now, I would like to introduce you to our panel, which will focus on aging and what you can do to slow down the process. Our panelists are Dr. Caroline Ganobis and Dr. Ian White. The moderator is the VP of Operations at Eterna Health, Noreen Syed. Dr. Ganobis has a PhD in cellular and molecular biology, where she studied the gut microbiome and its pivotal role in human health. She has since worked as a scientific consultant for biotech and startup companies focusing on creating microbiome therapeutics for longevity. She also offers support within the pharmaceutical industry in the medical field. Dr. Ganobis continues to be an advocate for women in STEM and acts as a mentor and member in many female-led associations. Can we clap for her? Because I love that. Dr. White is considered a leading expert in the field of aging and regenerative medicine. He received his PhD from the Ansari Stem Cell Institute, Division of Regenerative Medicine at Cornell University, and performed postdoctoral research at the Interdisciplinary Stem Cell Institute at the University of Miami's Miller School of Medicine. He is the CEO and CSO of Neobiosis, a perinatal regenerative tissue research and manufacturing CDMO, and serves as the Vice President and member of the Board of Directors of the American College of Regenerative Medicine. Dr. White is the founder of the Space Aging Research Institute. Take it away, Noreen.
Okay. Oh, yes, the mic is on. So thank you, Dr. White, Dr. Ganobis, for joining us today. I have a few questions for you guys. So, Dr. White, what are some common misconceptions about aging?
What are some of the common misconceptions about aging? Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation. This is a real joy. It's great to see so many people interested in longevity and aging. This is a very dynamic field, so you're in it at the right time. There's a lot happening right now. So what are some of the misconceptions? Well, of course, there's the basic misconceptions that as we age, we should slow down, not take risks, avoid injuries, when in fact the data demonstrates quite the opposite, that we should maintain activity. We do need to keep strong bones and strong muscles. And in fact, the idea that sarcopenia is a result of aging is perhaps the wrong way around, and that we age because we develop sarcopenia. But there's a lot of research out there right now studying the contribution of muscles to the aging process. But I would say the biggest misconception is really, understanding what age is. There's a lot of the science out there in the field of aging that would liken typically aging to a car rusting. As we go through time, we accumulate rust, and there's nothing we can do about it. But of course, there is something we can do about it. Aging actually is not inevitable. What we need to do differently is understand that aging isn't just a question of biology. Aging is a question of biology, chemistry, and physics. And in my sort of quest to understand aging, what I discovered or rediscovered, because this has been described decades ago before we really understood epigenetics and how genes are properly regulated. But aging really is the accumulation of entropy. It's damage over time. And we have to understand what time is in order to understand what aging is. So to understand time, you have to go and look at the universe. How does the universe age? We tell time. We're able to tell time because of the accumulation of entropy, because of gravity, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into details of that right now. Oh, I was cut off. No. But once we understand what time is, then we can understand how time influences aging. And that's really where my research is focused, is understanding the physics of aging as well as the biology. So the misconception really is that it's a simple question of biology when it's actually not.
Well, that actually brings me to my next question, actually. We look at physical age, right? We will see the gray hair and the wrinkles on our face. But what does it mean from a biological perspective?
Yeah, so we're all familiar with age, and unfortunately, we've lost relatives to the aging process. Aging kills 100% of human beings. It's an unfortunate statistic, but it's true. But it actually evolved as a positive mechanism during the evolution of organisms on Earth. There's some controversy around this, but in the 80s, a group thought that they had disproven the idea that aging evolved to protect our species or to protect other species by removing individuals from the populations once they had an opportunity to reproduce. But in fact, that does seem to be the case, that it's a positively selected trait, aging. It gives us the opportunity to reproduce and then evolve. If we're undergoing these micro changes in our genome in order to benefit from new environments that as the world itself evolved, if we didn't have those little incremental changes, we wouldn't be able to evolve. And if we didn't evolve and we didn't remove the previous generation, we wouldn't be able to free up the resources for the next generation. So I talk a lot about that in my upcoming book. So what is aging? It's a biological switch to turn us off, to get rid of us. It's been evolved over millions of years, and now it's time to undo that.
Wow, okay, so Dr. Ganobis, the next question is for you. What is one of the most important components of aging?
So I might be a little bit biased here. Coming from a gut microbiome background, I would say the gut microbiome. We've spoken a lot today about human cells and their aging process and how that's detrimental to us, but I think we forget that every one of us here has more microbial cells in them than human cells. So you are 1 to the 10 human versus microbial. So we forget about these key players that are so influential in our health, in our development, in our immune system, that come with us from the beginning, so from being born to the end. So we've seen a lot of disease progression with changes in the gut microbiome. We've seen different signatures in an aging population, depending on their gut microbiome. And we're also seeing not just who's there, but we're looking at what they're doing. So I think this is one of the most important things as well. Though you might have a microbiome within you, it's also dependent on what they're doing. So that's really where we're seeing some of these problems in the development of inflammation. We've heard many speakers here talk about leaky gut. That comes with having a good colonic environment, so maintaining that health, but that can only be done really if you have a good immune system that's able to work well with those gut microbes that are hopefully happily living within you. Otherwise, we've seen that disease progression and aging process tend to expedite and speed up significantly.
If I could just quickly mention something there as well. It's kind of interesting that there's so much confusion around the idea that the gut microbiome is so influential and such an important part of our evolution because, of course, our mitochondria came from a symbiotic relationship with microorganisms. So throughout our entire evolutionary history, we've had a very intimate relationship with microorganisms.
Yeah. And it hasn't changed at all.
You started talking about how longevity and the gut microbiome play a role. Can you specifically give some examples of how important the microbiome is to our gut and longevity?
Sure. So I can give a few examples that we've seen in literature. So I think maybe if we take a step back and really look at, okay, so we're born and we have this gut microbiome that isn't developed quite well. As we go through life, we're exposed to all of these things in our environment. Then we build this ecosystem within us as we progress through life. So when we're younger, neonates and maybe getting to 2 years of age, we have a very primal gut microbiome. As we get older, we introduce different foods, we change our diet, we become more active. That gut microbiome changes, but it's quite resilient. So when we're healthy, we're able to withstand a lot of things. So things like stress, we might have a little bit of a shift, but it's able to bounce back if we're healthy. If we go through too much stress, if we have a shift in our diet that is too significant and we were exposed to those foods too frequently, we've seen within literature and data that we have a different microbial signature where we've seen things like dysbiosis, we've heard, or an imbalance in some of those good microbes and bad microbes, leading to consequential states like obesity, even things like depression, we've seen links there. I'm sure we've heard of many individuals having celiac, IBS, IBD. All of those things are contributable factors, or the outcomes of those contributable factors that have led to that dysbiotic or imbalanced state. So maybe even taking a step back further, well, how do we know it's the microbiome, someone might ask. Preclinically, we've seen in some mouse studies, not perfectly translatable to humans because we are humans and those are mice, but some of those mice can be born without any microbes within them. And what they've done in those studies is taken a mouse that has a certain disease state, so something as simple, I'll say there with air quotes, someone or a mouse that might be obese. They've taken their gut microbiome from that obese mouse, put it into a mouse that has no microbes whatsoever, and we've seen that same phenotype. So that means we've seen that mouse then progress to an obese state. So there certainly is a link there with longevity, and then, of course, we've seen metabolic disorders come forward with getting into an obese state and other diseases following. So truly just any imbalance, I would say, in terms of who is there and especially what they're doing has been seen to impact longevity.
So I'm sure our audience is going to ask you, is there anything on the market right now for this particular?
I'm sorry to say no. I think what we're seeing from a consumer standpoint, it's unfortunate, but what you're seeing at Whole Foods and a lot of these health food stores, and it's available on the shelf or even in the fridge, you think it's better, and it is marginally better, but they're not going to be able to colonize you. So again, if we take a step back and maybe understand why. Your gut microbes, remember there are so many of them. If you take a little capsule that has one microbial member and you have about 300 to 400 different bacterial species in you, it's like putting a new kid into a group where they're already happy. They're not going to want to welcome anyone else. So you're taking that pill and it's kind of saying, hey guys, and it does a little bit of something, but the moment that you stop, you're not seeing that effect anymore. So unfortunately, a lot of the effects are transient. You could save your money, and there are many other ways where you could improve your gut microbiome health.
Okay, back to Dr. White. Reversing aging, is that possible? And have you seen that in nature?
Yeah, it's a good question. So is aging reversible? Because, of course, time only goes in one direction, and can we reverse aging? Well, what's really fascinating is that in the entire universe, the only thing that is different about the universe is this thing called life. Life is unique in the universe in that it is the only thing that can dump entropy. So while everything else is aging at a constant speed throughout the universe, life has the ability to slow that down and even reverse it. So we see it in many different species, this ability to process entropy, to undo damage, undo cellular damage, undo methylation of genes. We see that in species like the Greenland shark that can live for over 400 years. We see it in tortoises that can live over 300 years. Teratopsis dohrnii is the immortal jellyfish. And what this jellyfish does is that it's born as a baby, of course, and then it matures to an adult. It becomes sexually mature, and then it just de-differentiates back to a baby again. So it literally turns back the clock, and it just keeps doing that forever. So there are jellyfish in the ocean right now that are over 5,000 years old, that's estimated. But lobsters do it as well. Lobsters don't show any signs of biological aging. They're able to disconnect and uncouple biological aging from chronological aging. So yes, I believe that it's possible. What about humans? Can we see it in humans? Well, I think we talked a little bit about iPS cells previously. I worked in a lab for a few years where we were working on c-Myc that ended up becoming one of the Yamanaka factors. And we saw the ability to de-age skin. We can take an old skin cell and turn it back into an embryonic-like stem cell. So the phenomenon exists. It exists in nature. It's not like we're trying to invent time travel. What we're trying to do is take advantage of the biology that already exists and figure out how to make that, or how to apply that to humans.
And that's going to be the question from our audience. What can they do today to help pause or reverse aging? Yeah, well, that's the billion-dollar question, but we are making progress. So my research is focused on the biology of heterochronic parabiosis. So if you're not familiar with that, the idea is that if you take tissue from a young individual, which we know
accumulates damage a lot slower than older tissues. If you take those young tissues and you supplement old tissues with them, in the case of heterochronic parabiosis, they took 2 mice, one young, one old, they sutured them together. The old mouse showed signs of getting older, and the old mouse showed signs of getting younger. We're able to do that in a more natural way because pregnancy is a natural form of heterochronic parabiosis. And you can take birth tissue, so after the baby's born, this is not an issue as far as ethics is concerned because it's considered medical waste. We can take the amniotic fluid and all those other tissues, we can process them in a lab and actually give them to an older individual. And so let's say a burn victim, maybe a 40-year-old burn victim, the rate at recovery for that individual might be 2 to 3 months to recover from those burns. But we're able to trick the skin into thinking that it's younger. It turns on. Remember I said that aging is an off switch. It's a progressive off switch. The reason we age and get wrinkly and gray is because our body is trying to turn us off to get rid of us. But what these tissues do is confuse the body into thinking that it's young again, and it starts turning on all these pro-regenerative processes again. It's de-aging the skin, and we're seeing recovery within a week instead of 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
Pain goes from 10 out of 10 to 2 out of 10 within 30 minutes.
Wow.
And the skin recovers without scarring. Same thing with diabetic ulcers. We're able to apply it to diabetic ulcers in older individuals where normally there would be no recovery whatsoever. Progressively, it would get worse and they'd have to amputate the foot, let's say. We're able to apply these young products that trick the skin into thinking it's young again. We see the healing in a very short period of time. No scarring, no pain, and the skin looks like baby skin. It looks baby soft.
That's incredible. And those are technologies that are available currently?
These are technologies we're deploying right now. We actually have an IND approved by the FDA for a clinical trial using this technology in post-COVID. So as you know, the older you get, the more the cytokine storm can affect your biology with COVID. So younger individuals don't suffer from that because they're able to modulate their immune system much better. We're able to trick the immune system into thinking that it's young, and actually we get the same response we see in younger individuals, so we're able to pull people out of that post-COVID syndrome.
That's
We're
incredible.
also working on cosmetics as well, trying to put this more in cosmetics so we can apply it directly to the skin over the counter.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Back to Dr. Ganobis. So, as we age, what do you suggest we do to help our gut microbiome?
It's a good question. I think there are many things that the general population could be doing now, many things that a lot of the speakers have already mentioned. Really honing in on diet. This is where I might rub a few people the wrong way. But plants, I think, are quite beneficial to these gut microbes that we've seen preclinically. And I'll go back and say it's all about balance. So having a keto diet, for example, what we've seen in preclinical studies as well, when we're looking at just the gut microbiome, they create these things called metabolites. And when that gut microbiome from a human is taken and we feed it just a protein-rich animal source diet, we actually see metabolites that are very pro-inflammatory and precancerous, leading to things like colorectal cancer. So this is where I agree, and I would say you don't want to strictly eat a ketogenic diet. You want to have that mix, so I would say that's number one. Really focusing in on diet there and having adequate fiber because your microbes actually love carbs. There are certain carbs that they like, of course, something that's a bit more nutritious and well-rounded, so keeping those things in mind. Another thing is even stress. So your gut microbiome also has a circadian rhythm. So during the day, you have a certain microbial signature, and it's able to produce certain metabolites that are beneficial for you, and at night, you have a different one. So it's going to be equipped to be able to digest certain foods during the day, and then digest other foods that might be passing through as well overnight. So make sure that stress is also addressed because we've seen cortisol spikes and relations there in terms of having things like a leaky gut or a different microbial signature that again is more pro-inflammatory. We keep hearing things like inflammation. So I would say these are two main things, truthfully, that you could take home now that are simple. Diet and really honing in on stress because we're living in such a fast-paced environment. And we've seen trials where we have seen different signatures leading to different health outcomes.
And if I can reiterate that, diet is absolutely critical. What a lot of people don't really realize is that the major cause of obesity in this country isn't caloric imbalance, it's inflammation. The body's response to injury and stress is to make adipose. That's how the body responds to stress. So if you have a fatty heart, you have a heart attack, they crack your ribs, you have a fatty heart, the thought was that, well, no wonder they had a heart attack, look how fatty the heart is. It's actually the other way around. So my research demonstrated that when you injure the heart, the epicardium that surrounds the heart actually transforms into adipose. And it's used as an energy source and a growth factor source for the tissue that's damaged. So all of this obesity that we're experiencing can be partially mitigated by removing inflammation from the diet. And I'll also say, going back to the idea of eating a lot of plants, in my book I have a chapter called Eat the Sun. And the idea is that you've got to eat the lowest form of entropy. I don't want to get into the whole entropy thing again, but the idea is that we can't literally take energy from the sun. That's what plants can do. So if we're able to consume the plants, we're able to eat the lowest form of entropy, which means that these proteins are not cross-linked. If you like to eat steak and you cook it, that browning on the top, those are the ages we were talking about. Right? These are the advanced glycan end products. These are very inflammatory. It's the sugars cross-linking proteins, and it makes it almost impossible for the gut to absorb the nutrients. So if you can eat proteins that are not cross-linked, that have lower entropy, and by entropy I just mean more things that have happened to them, for lack of a better explanation. They are fresher, they are newer. You eat a younger cow versus an older cow. You're able to utilize these proteins a lot better. They don't end up in the body becoming inflammatory.
Very, very interesting. I have one other question, it's off the cuff, because circadian rhythm of your microbiome, I didn't know that existed. So are you suggesting that we should be eating similar foods each day at very specific times of the day?
I think there's something to be said to that. I don't know that I would go as granular to say eat the same thing every single day at the same time, but certainly sticking to a window, I think is quite beneficial just from a microbiome standpoint, and I'm sure we've heard a lot about intermittent fasting as well. I won't dive in there, that's not my niche. But I think sticking to that window of when they are going to be awake, you do take about 24 hours to maybe 36, depending on who you are, to digest foods and to let them go through you. But you will see more activity during the day within your gut microbiome than at night. And I'm sure you wouldn't want to be dealing with an active gut microbiome or GI system overnight. So really taking on that opportunity and sticking to that circadian rhythm that they have too.
Amazing. Okay, Dr. White, back to you. We talked about all these technologies that are coming down the pipeline. Do you think humans will eventually live longer? And I know Deal wants to live until he's 100 and, what did you say? 180, okay.
I think you're shooting too low. I think that we certainly have the capacity to live to 1,000. Why not? I mean, the historical biology dictates that we can't live over 120 currently with the technology that exists. Even with all of the supplements that we take, it's going to be very hard to push that 120 boundary just because we've evolved over so many years to have that upper limit be our cutoff point, that it's going to be very hard to break that just with basic science. We need a fundamental change in our understanding of the biology, chemistry, and physics of aging to come up with that thing, whatever that is, that actually teaches the body, just like Teratopsis dohrnii, to be able to de-differentiate the tissues, stop the aging process, because again, all aging is the accumulation of entropy. We stop getting rid of entropy as we age. That's why we age. Some species are able to uncouple biological aging from chronological aging, and we just need to be able to figure out how to do the same thing. So I think that, yes, I think we could be theoretically immortal.
Fantastic. Okay, so when do you think we can become immortal? How many years in
Well,
the future?
it depends how much money I'm able to raise for the research.
Okay.
But certainly, with AI and everything, we're accelerating research. I think we've probably got a good shot at it within the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. So within most of our lifetimes, everyone in this room.
Yeah.
will
So
probably see this.
do all the things right now to stay healthy because you don't want to miss that window when it comes. Right?
That's incredible. Okay, Dr. Ganobis, last question is for you. What future do you see for the therapeutics of microbiomes?
I think it kind of goes with Dr. White's comment here. It depends on how much funding we can get. The regulatory bodies are a little bit skeptical about gut microbiome work, and that's truthfully because it comes from poop. So working with people's poop is a little bit problematic. But I think if we're able to get a lot of traction and we can really talk shit comfortably. I think that there's a lot of potential. So really looking at, I mentioned probiotics aren't great of what you can get from a consumer side. So I'm sure we've heard a lot about FMT, so fecal microbiota transfer. If we're able to get a capsule that's able to recapitulate a healthy gut microbiome into a human like ourselves and repopulate and colonize and get into this healthier state, I think that will be pivotal. And those are things I would hope we're seeing a lot more in the pipeline. So things like that, but just getting comfortable talking shit, I'll say.
Yes. All right, that was all for us for today. So thank you so much for coming out, answering these incredible questions. And I'm sure you'll get a slew of questions afterwards. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.